Welcome. This is Shane Silsby. I'm here with the Public Works Podcast, and today we're talking with Laura Kroeger, Executive Director of the Mile High Flood Control District. It's an organization that serves about 2 million residents across the Denver metro area. And under Laura's leadership, the district plays a critical role in protecting communities from flooding, while also enhancing waterways and open spaces that help people recreate every day. Laura has decades of experience in the water management infrastructure arena. She started in the daycare program, I'm sure, if you have decades of experience by now.
Thank you.
And she has the ability to navigate complex partnerships, lead with vision, build trust in a field where success often means preventing disasters that the public may never see. Heaven forbid something slips past the goalie and happens, then everybody blames folks in the public works industry, but then doesn't think about the 99% of when things never happen. Finally, we'll discuss with her role as APWA's Technical Director of Leadership and Management and being a past top 10 Public Works Leader of the Year. Thank you, Laura. Thanks for being here today. And thanks for all your great work in the industry.
My pleasure, Shane.
Yeah. So I wanted to just mention that APWA Top 10 Leader of the Year. That's a big recognition, a big accomplishment. I don't know what we have in the country, 350 plus million people. You're 1 out of 10 of those. Laura, it was pre-pandemic, so we know that everybody was voting with clarity of mind and purpose. So congratulations to you on that recognition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was certainly an honor.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, you've been doing things, locally in Denver and in the area, and of course with APWA for years. For your journey, real quick, I'm going to go on and off with glasses here. In your journey, you worked at a couple different named districts, but I think it was kind of the same one flowing through, if I remember right. But maybe take us through kind of your career and how you got to be the executive director.
Sure. I graduated from undergraduate at Valparaiso University and had an interest in water. And I was fortunate to have a professor who had done work through ASCE, who had some contacts out in Denver. And I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. And so I moved out to Denver, but grad school is really expensive. So getting residency was kind of key. And I was able to utilize some of his connections to get into the water world. But I really had more of an interest being on the private side to start with. And Shane and I were talking earlier about Valparaiso very much had a program that was influenced by the private side, more so than the research side. So that's what I knew and wanted to make a difference in. And so I started working for a local company called Sellards and Gregg and did design work for what used to be called the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District. And worked in that for about 8 years. And my husband was also a consultant and worked for a competing firm for mine. And when an opportunity came up at the district to flip over, he thought that might be a good idea for me, and I thought that was interesting. And to this day, he always says, "I don't know why I didn't say I should have done that."
Laura, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
My guess is if you were at competing consulting firms, you were probably beating him every time, and so he had to find a way to change the competition and said, "Okay, go over there and be a client." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, let's go with that story. I like it.
Yeah.
So I started at the district as a project engineer, and I did design and construction projects. And I really fell in love with the work that we did and the connection to the community that you could see it directly. I love construction, which is the reason why I went into civil engineering. So being hands-on, working with contractors on a regular basis and working with consulting firms. We're a bit more of a management agency. We don't do in-house design. And so we have a great partnership with the private side. And having that experience, I think, helped me do well, being able to manage that type of work and now be at a little bit more of a higher influence to maximize and leverage our dollars to get more projects into the ground. And have been here for 20 plus years and just worked my way all the way up to finally they couldn't get rid of me and they had to give me the executive director job. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Yeah.
Well, that can be your story. I'm sure it was qualifications, dedication, hard work, all those things. Being very intelligent obviously helps, which we know you are. So let me just at least ask you one question about that because of the way you just mentioned how the district kind of works. It works across multiple cities and at least one county, if not multiple counties or regions. So the question here is, what leadership strategies have helped you align so many different stakeholders towards a shared goal from the flood control district?
Yeah, so yes, you're correct. We work with 7 counties
7
and
counties.
35 plus local agencies. We're a regional district. And I think that's one of the things I love about the work that we do. It is about creating partnerships so that we can leverage our resources and our manpower to better protect people and property and the environment from flood risk. And I think that big vision is what has helped our industry really unite in what we're trying to accomplish. And when you work with any team, right, having a shared vision is really at the goal of anything that you do. I think the other key thing that we do is we recognize we are working in a larger system. So it's great that we're a flood district, but we know when we're partnering with the city of Denver, they're also dealing with transportation issues, with safety issues, with connectivity, with housing. And I think what makes our projects successful is that we align our vision with the local governments of recognizing what does it mean to reduce risk. And sometimes our project may be that we're doing a flood project, but we're putting in a below grade crossing because I also have a safety issue. And you kind of indicated during the intro that most people don't recognize flood risk on a regular basis, right? And so
Right.
the key that we have found to work successfully is to find the multiple benefits within our work so that we can get the flood reduction done, but we can also find something else that the community is in need of. And I think that's been the key to our success at the district.
Yeah, you're working with so many people and so many stakeholders and so many different situations. You must keep it interesting, but also a lot of opinions and perspectives to deal with there, right?
Yeah, and I think it's something that we learned from the federal side, right? It's not a one size fits all. Boulder is not Denver. And what works in Denver might not be great in Arapahoe County. And so we do try to have an overall arching vision that we want the impact of, but how we get there will look different depending on who we work with.
Good point. And that leads me right into my next question for you. Can you share an example of a time when you set a long-term vision for your team or the organization and how you aligned those people around it? You talked about that a little bit early, getting people aligned around a shared vision, but can you explain a little bit about how you do that successfully?
Yes, a lot of phone calls, really.
A lot of phone calls. And lunches. We were talking about lunches
A lot
earlier.
of lunches, a lot of happy hours. I'm totally in. So much of what we do is relationship based. But one of the projects that I think was instrumental in how we work today with people and can really put the highest value projects in the ground is that we changed how we delivered projects. And this is about 15 years ago. So alternate project delivery was starting to become a thing. And we were struggling like most organizations with design, bid, build.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very highly competitive market just even to select a design firm and then go out to public bid. And you didn't always end up with the cream of the crop. And we thought that we could do better. And we ended up going from this, really that's a transactional way of doing work, right? Design, bid, build, to more of a relationship based, and recognizing that we do the same type of work year after year. So developing a relationship with that group that does that, that's highly trusted, we could really cut down on the paperwork and the process end and just get to putting projects in the ground to reduce risk. But we had to get 40 other people to buy into something that we had no scientific proof would work.
Oh, I see.
And so it really was about having an aspirational vision. And we used the vision, the imagery of a dog sled team, because we kept talking about we're always in a dog fight, right? Every project in this dog fight with a little bit. It's like, it's exhausting. And so I think giving somebody something, when we talk about this relationship-based approach, we want to work as a dog sled team. How we all pull into the same direction. And that really helped people be like, oh, I'm interested. And then it was a lot of one-on-one meetings to build support, understand, for them to understand why we wanted to do it. The why is always so important. It's not always the what, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time on the why. And then when we were actually doing the implementation of it, we created feedback loops. So we knew what was working well and what still needed to be adjusted. And this is end-to-end 5-year process.
Oh, wow.
But since the day we launched it, we have never done a design bid build since.
Yeah, I'm a fan of alternate delivery. So, I mean, that's a whole nother session we can have together. I think a lot of people might not understand that in the low bid process, you're taking something that's on 2D on paper and you're converting it to 3D, and there's risks involved in that. And you only have to have two things to win a multi-million-dollar contract in low bid as to construct it. And that is, at least in California and Arizona and Michigan where I work, it's a general contractor's license and the lowest price. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is crossing your fingers if you're a public agency. So
Absolutely. I'm with you. We could do a whole session on it.
but kudos to you for getting through that. I had a similar journey at Orange County and changing state law. It took me 4 years in California, but you got it done in 5. I'm sure folks are still working through it in their agencies all across the country, even longer. So,
and the one comment I'll add to that, Shane, is I developed the plan when I was like a mid-level manager. Oh. So I love talking about leadership as that we're all leaders and we all have that ability to bring out the best in others and influence change. It doesn't have to come with a title. And so I just encourage anybody, if you got a good idea, put it out there. It doesn't make a difference if you got a leader behind your name.
Well, I think strategically, perhaps that can be helpful for you as like the executive director. If you have somebody that comes through demonstrating leadership and they have a good idea and all you have to do is support it, maybe easier than trying to have to go top down, which sometimes happens in the regulatory world or funding world. So yeah, good point. So you were one of those that were pushing up, and maybe a hint to our future leaders, demonstrating leadership at a lower level can then signal or flag that you might be ready for an upper level position.
Absolutely.
So that brings me over to wanting to talk to you about leadership and management. And perhaps you could talk to us about first your role on the American Public Works Association as a technical director on the national board and what that means and how you got to that position. Obviously you have an interest in that topic, but how did you end up there?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a journey. I don't know if anybody's been part of associations. It really helps to know somebody because you got to break in somewhere. I had started at the district, and my boss was we have delegates for each chapter in the American Public Works Association. He was a delegate for Colorado, encouraged me to get involved. And so I started doing the awards program. So I was familiar at the chapter level, and I was getting the magazine, which we call the Reporter. Right. And an article was written about from who is a wonderful mentor of mine, Sue Han. And she was talking about how she starts her morning with working out and how that kind of goes through her day. And I could relate to that really well. So I sent her a note of just saying, really appreciate the article that you wrote. I really related to it. And she gave me a heads up about a new program they were launching at a national level called the Emerging Leaders Academy. And she was going to be an instructor for it and encouraged me to apply. And I did. And I got accepted. But at the time, it was the first class, so I think we all got accepted. So it wasn't anything that we were like.
Well, the story I'm going to go with is there was millions of applicants. You were one of the selected few.
Thank you. And that is true today, though, because the new class just got selected. And it was, I want to say like 120 and only 30 people get selected. So it has become a very elite program. And I'm very proud to be part of it. But that really connected me to what was offered from the Public Works Association. And going to the national conference, they have a wonderful track for leadership and management. And they have a technical committee. And so after a couple of years, after doing the program, I nominated myself to be on the committee. And a lot of work for that committee is doing the education and writing articles and doing trainings. And that's kind of my jam and helped me really develop that skill set. A little side note, when I was in high school, I won a scholarship to International Leadership Conference, I think was what it was called. It was through the American Youth Foundation. And I had no idea what leadership was, right? I mean, you're 16, you don't know what you're doing. And you go to this camp And now I reflect on all that work that we did this camp that was Leadership 101. And I remember being so energized from that experience that like, oh, that's what I want to do. But they don't have that. They didn't have that in whatever, 1992 when I was graduating. And so I've always very much a service-minded, love people, love seeing people be at their best. And that's kind of how I define leadership. So being part of a committee that focused on that was really exciting. And we did a lot of great work with developing some consistent framework of how do we talk about leadership and how is that different than management? Mm-hmm. And then the technical position became available on the board, and Mary Joyce Ivers, do you know Mary Joyce?
Yes, past president.
She was the president at the time, and she heard me give a presentation at a state conference. And she was like, you know, you really should apply to be on the board. And I had never imagined being on the board. And it was really through her suggestion and confidence, right? That I said, yes, I'd apply. And it's been a wonderful experience. I've just had my 5th year. And so the board is made up of regional directors that represent each region. There's 9 within the association, and then 5 technical directors. And so we support the association to give it guidance of direction and how we can provide education and advocacy for those who support, build, maintain public infrastructure.
Yeah, and congratulations on your role there and all your success. I think it's interesting you brought that up, that even in a high school program or early education program, there was something that was teaching some leadership skills and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that people might not appreciate is some people maybe are born to be a little bit more, have a leadership slant. Maybe you're firstborn or you went through something or whatever, but that just doesn't give you those skills automatically, right? And so I think that's interesting that you experienced those at an early age, and now you're able to put those on display, and people might look back and say, oh, well, Laura's just a great leader. And yes, you are, but there are things that took you through that journey.
I so agree with you of, you know, leaders, it's a journey, right? Yeah. And there are practices all of us can do every day that help hone that skill set and that influence. I think people are born with charisma, and there's some advantages to charisma, but there's a lot of disadvantages too. Sometimes we end up following people that have charisma, but maybe not necessarily strong leadership skills. And that's something that as you look for leaders in your organization, do peel back the onion, right? And make sure you're finding those people that really have some of those more innate things that help a team be more successful than necessarily seeing the fun guy at the party.
For sure. And people can be led in the wrong direction, right? A leader, we always think of leaders being positive leaders, but you know, there's always that alternative. Exactly. I'm going to jump into a few technical questions here because you're an expert, because you're on APWA's National Committee on Leadership and Management.
Oh boy.
You can answer these very easily, but let's start with more of a subjective one. Maybe not as subjective, but you mentioned this a little bit, leadership versus management. And, you know, I like to think, and you can debate me, but, you know, every leader needs to know about management and could be a manager, but maybe every manager could not be a leader. But what do you think the differentiators are, and any other thoughts on those 2 categories?
Yes, I in general like to think you lead people, you manage process.
Good point. Yes.
And so there are people that are very good about managing a process. And oftentimes we then want to promote that to leading people, and it doesn't always translate well. And I truly believe in public works, the most effective leaders have good management skills, but you've got to do it through the people to be most impactful.
Good point. So your leaders need to understand the process that needs to be managed, but a different skill set to manage the people doing the process versus the process itself. Very interesting.
So
great answer.
Yeah, I think it really translates well is when we talk about like managing change. You know, it's really leading change. And we spend so much time on the process of what the change implementation looks like that we forget that people don't like change, right? And what you have to do is convince the people on the why to change before you can even get into the process. And it's a mistake that happens even we catch ourselves doing it here all the time. And I have a little thing on my desk that I keep to remind me, go back to the people. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said earlier in the discussion, start with why, right? That's
Always.
kind of something we kind of know as leaders, but then we sometimes forget. You
And
mentioned
that's why it's a
Shane.
practice, right? We're always
Practice.
practicing. It's like yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. Not perfect. It's practice. That reminds me of when I was moving 4,000 people at the county in a new administration building all at once, pretty much. And the one thing that came through surveys and all this stuff is people were concerned about their parking and their computer in their office space. And in that project, we moved all three. So that's the lesson is don't do that unless you have to. Yeah. Yeah. You talked about some of these things, but do you want to share, expand on a pivotal moment in your career that helped shape your leadership style? We talked about your early training, but anything later on that stands out to you?
Yeah, I appreciate this question because it definitely gave me a little reflection. And the first time I was in a position where I was managing a large team, my new boss, after maybe a couple of weeks of just being in this role, he came into my office and he said, Laura, your office, there's people in here all day, in and out. And, now that you're in this role, you really need to protect your time better. And that it's okay to shut your door and let people know that you need to get work done. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I did. And I lasted about 2 months before I was completely miserable, completely disconnected. And I'm like, wow, this isn't working for me. And I had to reflect on what my value system was, because my boss, that worked well for him. And I'm not saying he wasn't an effective leader, because that was the way he managed and led. I managed through people. And when I'm not connected, I don't know what's going on. They don't know that I'm present and, supporting them. And so the lesson for me was that you have to know your own values and what drives you and be authentic to that. And that it does not have to look like your mentors or your bosses or your best friends. Do what fits you. So take the time to know yourself, and you'll be much more successful when you lead from your own authenticity and your heart.
That's great. Yeah. And that leads into my next question, actually. But just a point on that is I tried to let people know when I was a director, not as successful as you, obviously, but heads down versus heads up activity. So if I'm a heads down activity, that means I've got a board deadline or something that has to be done. I'm going to be heads down. I always had transparent doors or whatever, so people could see that was happening, but otherwise open, I wanted to be heads up, because that's where I got my energy from, right? Working with people and understand what's going on. So what leadership lessons have you carried forward or not carried forward from some of your mentors or role models? I think you just mentioned one you didn't necessarily carry forward, which is the door closed more than not, but what other thoughts might you have on that?
I am always feel extremely blessed that my earliest role model was my mother. And I know to be able to be exposed to that at a young age, again, I feel very fortunate. And my mom didn't have any great quotes that I can tell you. But what she did, she was a woman of action. So words were cheap in my house. And the two things action-wise that she showed day in and day out was being present with us. And so she was a single mom with 3 teenagers that were very involved, and she showed up to everything that she could. If it was a freezing cold track meet, she's there on the sideline waiting for 2 hours to watch 30 seconds of a race, right? And so she just made sure that we knew that she was there to support us in whatever that looked like. And she could read what we needed. Sometimes you wanted to talk about whatever happened, and sometimes you just needed to be left alone and go out for ice cream. She could pick up on that. And the second thing that she did every morning was she said prayers on the edge of her bed. And so for me, to make sure that you need to be centered every day, right? We have so many distractions, so many things that can zap us, that if you take the time to get grounded in whatever way that is for you, it sets you up to be able to be there for other people, because you were there for yourself in the morning or whatever your routine is. And so we went through some stuff, and she was the rock. And I really think it was that grounding her faith that showed us that was the way to be successful.
Oh, and you remember that now very clearly, and that's what you're doing, I think, as a leader for your teams, is being there, showing up, being involved, having your door open, communicating, making lunch for them as a team building activity. Yes.
Yeah.
You want to share a little bit more on that? Yeah. On your lunch.
What's that?
You want to share a little bit more on your lunch?
When we just got on this chat, Shane was asking how my day was going, and I was like, it was great, but kind of busy. That we had just had our employee appreciation day, and the director team, we make lunch, and this year we made gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches for 50 people, and all hands on deck, and have a wonderful team. So love doing something nice for them and giving them an afternoon and a nice meal, and appreciate the director team, because we are really good at teamwork, and man, to become short, chefs in the kitchen.
Short order cooks. Yeah.
Thank you. Short order cooks. I feel like we did a pretty decent job. There's room for improvement. We're always about continuous improvement. But I think we were able to deliver things on time, and I think everybody got the right sandwich except for David Anderson. But
well, David, next time we'll get
we
you.
told him it was, it was on the house, so it was okay. Yeah.
He got what he paid for.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good question for you then, and this could be an example, but how do you cultivate and retain talent while keeping your team motivated in a field where success sometimes means preventing disasters that the public may never see? We talked about that a bit in the intro, but retention of talent, attracting of talent to your organization. In addition to lunches, when you and I have talked over the years, you've always said food, lead with food. That's a good start. But what else are you working on?
And I think the food part is it's love. That
Social,
I think we're starved for it. And if you as an organization can show that to your people, they show it back to you tenfold. Mm-hmm. And it's motivating to be around it and to be with people that are also service minded. To your point, our work isn't always appreciated until something bad happens, and we can't rely on that, right? So we need to rely on knowing that we made a meaningful impact on a community. Maybe it was through creating some open space or a park, that yes, it can convey flood flows, but we try to celebrate whenever we can. We're really big at clapping. So when we have a staff meeting, whoever talks, there's some clapping afterwards, just to keep people motivated on these small things make a difference. And, this week at our staff meeting, we had a cyber attack I was telling Shane about as well. And, recognizing the people that took their Friday night to make sure that our system was secure, and recognizing and appreciating that. But you need to be present and aware that those things are happening, and being able to acknowledge it timely, I think, is a big part of showing that love for your people.
Yeah, there's, a lot that goes into that, right? And one of the things I think that I learned later than I wish I would have learned was that generally speaking, I think employees want to be communicated with or interacted with in the way that they individually want to be interacted with, when they want to be interacted with, and with the information that they want to hear about the most. And so when you spread that across, right. Yes. So when you spread that across an entire organization, that is adjusting your message, in your case, potentially 60 times, right? Which is difficult. Because, my starting point was, well, I'm giving, information that's important or whatever, but I was giving it in one way, broadly, mass email, mass communication, mass newsletter, whatever. And people are like, I'm not looking at that, or I'm not doing this. So yeah, the customization is something I had to learn and have not perfected.
And it's a hard lesson. And kind of the method we're doing right now is an email or in the newsletter, talk about it at an all staff meeting, which is just once a month. And then the individual supervisors talk about it again, because you're right, each format, and you have to hear things several times. I don't know if we ever nail communication, but I do think what we do is build trust, that we're doing the best methods that we can by doing multiple ways. And so people don't feel distrust because they didn't catch something. But it is an ongoing battle to try to hit everyone's needs, for sure.
For sure. And maybe that can lead into, by the way, you get extra points for leading into these questions. Are you open to sharing a difficult decision or just maybe an interesting decision that you had to make as a leader, and how you approached it, and then what was the ultimate outcome?
That's what really had me pausing, because in this position, when I think about the difficult decisions, most of them are things you really can't talk about, right?
Yeah,
A lot of times,
personnel or financial,
dealing with, and finance and
Legal.
everything, if money wasn't, in a shortage, it wouldn't be an issue, but you got to make some tough decisions on what projects get funded and what areas you're going to put towards this year. And in general, I'm a data person. I pretty much try to stay objective of show me the value, show me the way. But there are times where you just have to trust your gut. And for the example that I talked about earlier with the alternative project delivery,
right?
that was just your gut that you needed to trust. And that gets better the more credibility you have. People are ready to go out on the ledge with you. But the one I can think of, because I think is an important one, when you have to make or support a decision when you're mid-level, you have to stay true to the leadership and stand behind it. But we had grown, our office space headed to expand, but we were making an area that could only house about 8 people, and it wasn't going to be attached to the rest of the office. At that time, I was overseeing our construction managers, and the executive director at the time was like, we should put the construction managers over in this area. And I really fought it, because it's a group that already feels like second-class citizens. Their offices were important for them because it showed a stature. And so when like a contractor came in to talk to them, and like, oh, you have a nice office, like that kind of raised them up. And that was really meaningful to them. You don't have that same thing when you're already a project manager or, a department head. And I felt like we were missing that, and we were going to cause them to really feel segregated. But that was the decision that was made. And it was made because they're the ones not in the office a lot. So I understood it, but communicating it, I had to stand behind the decision the executive director made and back it. And that was really hard to do, because in your head, you're saying something that you didn't necessarily, I guess, believe, but you had to support. But that's the things you have to do when you're in these leadership positions, is you have to support your first team.
And it's a lot of it's about learning, right? And then now when you're the executive director, you can look back on that and you might make a different decision. But I think what is many interesting things you brought up there, but for those in the industry who don't know, the construction managers or construction staff are generally mostly in the field, right? You're managing construction projects and overseeing contractors. But I hadn't thought about it from the perspective of negotiating with contractors when it comes to a contractual issue or a change order, an amendment, and the stature of that. That's interesting. You bring that up. So something to consider. One might say the data would show that you're spending money on office space, which is limited in use. Another might say, well, the amount we're saving in change order negotiations is 3x that. So there you have it. So very interesting point there. Doing a great job, Laura. I mean, that's why you're the director of the leadership management for APWA. All right. So a couple of more just kind of straightforward, maybe technical types of things. We talked earlier about leaders, and you can lead at every level, but how do you identify and nurture potential leaders within your team? And sub-question I forgot to ask before is, I think I heard you on another talk talking about aspirational vision. So first is on identifying future leaders, but then maybe wrapping in, using an aspirational vision to do that. You could separate them. I pushed them together, but.
So I honestly wish I had a better answer for you on development of identifying leaders. Right now, what we invest in is our entire team. So we have what we call a leadership gym.
Okay.
And so it's that.
And you have a physical gym.
And we do a physical gym too.
Yeah, both. Good.
We can put both together if necessary, but
you have the meeting in the gym.
We could do that.
And you invite people named Jim, and you can just multiply your effect. Yeah.
We are done. Trifecta right there.
Yeah. Apologies.
Bottom line.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we recognize that if you want people to be leaders, just tossing them into a big game without any training is not a really great approach, right?
Right.
And so how do we create opportunities that are in safer environments for people to develop these skills? And so we have lots of different avenues. So there's lots of different gym equipment. One is we are huge supporters of being in an association and being in a leadership position. So chairing a committee, being on a board, we will support you to do that. And we have representation in the flood community at a national board in every sector.
Oh, interesting.
Which is one of our goals. The other one that we do is a lot of in-house things. So we have like a leadership lunch. Each team often has their own book club. And it's things that you're going to lead that session, right? So get experience what it is to facilitate and bring people together around a topic. And then kind of the broader one of, do we identify for a program? We definitely support, we have two actually that are going to be in the Emerging Leaders Academy this year. So super excited. We sent a lot of people through that program. We have a water leaders program as well in the industry. So we offer those opportunities to everybody. We don't specifically pick out 5 or 10 or whatever and put them through something specific. And I don't know if that's good or bad, Shane. And I'd love to hear your input on that, actually. I know a friend of mine just talked about a leadership pipeline that I was like, oh, tell me more about that. And I haven't gotten there yet. So curious.
Well, just one of the things that it might not be a direct answer, but I did experience was I was taking, senior level managers, which were trying to convert into leaders because of the organizational structure. And we had about 1,000 people in that organization. So it was important to have some hierarchy.
Yeah.
And going through some different sessions, and your leadership gym is awesome. We were using different things, all the methods you might have heard about, speed of trust and DISC and all those things. And what I noticed through that process was some people were not engaging. And I think the mistake I made was trying to say, well, more training, more information, more sessions is going to push them into being the leaders they need to be to run those service areas. And then looking back years later, the trend, right, followed that was more negative than positive, and I could see it right there. I just didn't. Maybe I was too confident that we could make a change. I don't know, but that just comes to mind when you brought that up.
And I love that comment because we had that conversation a lot of. I think we can get like an average up to some level, and then there is you need to have that desire, right, to go to that higher level. That's one of the things that we've been talking about here. And how do you identify those people that do want to put that extra work in? Because it is work. These things are not natural skills. They have to be practiced. They're uncomfortable, right?
For sure.
And so I think that's something that we are trying to figure out. How do we go to that upper next level of training? So I understand your thinking on that and seeing it. The other one too that I'll say that we're trying to do is meet people where they're at and then help them grow versus saying you need to get to here. And this is a whole new concept to me that I just came across about a year ago. And that has been more effective of appreciate this is the skills you have. How do we build on those skills versus saying you need these skills, if that makes sense.
Interesting. I was thinking about something that we tried to implement, which I thought was pushing in that direction, was we would talk to people, as you know, in government, hierarchical organization pyramid. Managers generally and leaders are further up the pyramid, although you can be a leader at every level. Your title leader, and what I had to explain to people, and we tried to adjust classifications a little bit to deal with this, is look, not everybody's built to be a leader of people. We just talked about that, but you can be a technical expert, right? You can continue to refine your skills in a technical arena and be a go-to on the technical side. I don't know if that was good or bad, but we just didn't want people to lose energy or trying to progress their career because they kind of got, quote, topped out, even though they had more to give on the technical side. So
yeah, no, we're on that same idea, is that, again, when we talked before, people are really good at managing process and the technology, but their gift is not going to be leading people. Don't put them in a position to be, that's the only way you can advance. And so I
Right.
do think there's a lot of validity to that track that you're talking about.
So coming back to my
Aspirational.
aspirational vision. I mean, I think you talked about this in one of your other sessions, but how do you use that? How do you develop that? What's important about that? What do you think to maybe help your leaders or draw them out or just provide leadership?
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the hardest things as a leader is to have to be forward looking and aspirational, because you have to have that in order to get people excited to do something different, right? We talked about change is so hard. And so how do you come up with that aspirational vision that's going to get people be like, okay, I can back that.
In Laura, in a government setting, right? In a local government setting, right? Where you have where every day you're trying to put you in the box, put you in the box, put you in the box, right?
And I do think it is celebrating and acknowledging when people do it.
I see.
Right? That somebody went out on a limb, and sometimes maybe not even the best result, but we learned something. Celebrate that and let people know why that was important and why that was part of your value system. I think is one of the best ways to go about that. We don't have any like real inspirational like saying around leadership, besides that we know we can create a better impact to protect people, property, and our environment. We connect that to our mission, that we do that through leadership and we do that through relationships. And celebrating when we see that happening, I think has been a pretty effective way for us to want people to be inspired to do that, the hard stuff.
Yeah, good point. I know kind of on the empowerment side of that, one of the things I used to just tell people is just make a defensible decision, right? If you can defend it to your team, your chain will defend it to me and then I can defend it to the public or an elected official. But if you don't make a defensible decision first, kind of falls down. But
yeah. And the other one too, that I've found really helpful is I started managing larger and larger teams, is that you can't be involved in every decision, right? So to your point,
right.
A defensible decision, and I probably took it a little bit further, and you did too, is that aligns with our values.
Right.
These
So
are our 4 core values.
that's
If you stick with these 4 core values, you aren't going to go too far off the tracks.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had 3: morale or culture, efficiency, customer service. I said, if you're focusing on any of those, you make a wrong move, but you were doing it under those frameworks.
Yeah.
I said, we're probably not going to be, to your point, that far off center.
Exactly.
So some of this comes through workforce development. Okay. So my next question for you is, how can the public works industry improve efforts to develop a workforce capable of addressing not only the leadership demands we talked about, but future demands to integrate public infrastructure within public sector expectations? So workforce development, we're in the public sector spending taxpayer dollars or assessment dollars, and we're building public infrastructure with expectations. How do we get that workforce?
Yeah. So we just had a board retreat for APWA last week, and we were talking about, we want to increase our visibility, right, to the public. And so I was at a table and facilitating it, and but why do we want to do that? What's important about that? And the 2 things that you talked about is, if people don't know that this is a profession and that it's meaningful work, it's hard to attract people. And if the general public doesn't value the infrastructure that makes their lives run smoothly every day, they won't fund it. And we're having to do more and more bonding and tax increases. And so there's a lot that can be said with how do we let people know what we do and become better communicators in that messaging. But that's really broad, right, Shane? I mean, it's hard to educate the whole world. But if you realize that if you look within our own local agencies, how many of them believe what they're doing is meaningful work? Have they bought into that they are improving people's lives every day? And, I always say, if you're going to go to the mailbox and you see your neighbor, how was your day? What'd you do? If you said, you know what, I improved the safety for your kid getting to school today because I filled the potholes in the street. Us as a profession believing in our work and talking about it in a way that will impact and kind of be more of a grassroots effort, then all of a sudden it's oh, well, what is it that you do? I didn't even know that was a job. And so I feel like we can do some low cost efforts just about learning how to be better communicators in what we do for society.
Sure. Yeah. Communicating the why, like we've been talking about here, and the purpose. I was just thinking as you were going through that perhaps one of the challenges is that public works is a combination of many careers trying to be pushed into one vein. Like if you think about other categories of careers, finance, business, tech, whatever it is, construction, engineering, public works is kind of all those things pushed into one. So it can be broad, which is great, but broad can also be not specific enough for people to say, that's what I'm interested in. So I look forward to your thesis on that and your new book coming out about how we do workforce development.
I think the other challenge that we have is that I totally lost my train of thought.
Let me add
You
one
threw
in
me
for
off
you.
with the book. You threw me off the book, Shane.
Let me add it. This question is an additive. So this is an ad hoc question. So it has to do with the workforce though. And this is about 6G organizational strategy, the 6 generations in the workforce. And as we're developing a workforce, different approaches maybe for all those generations. I'm Gen X, you're probably much younger than me, but people react differently, right? So have you been doing that at all or thinking about that?
So it's funny. When I first got the first conference I spoke at, national conference for APWA, was on generational issues. And it was because there was 4 generations in the workforce. And that seemed to be a big deal at the time. And this is, whatever, I don't know how many years, a long time ago. And now we're talking about 5, now 6. Yeah. And it's coming back around in every topic group I'm talked to. Generational issues is high on everyone's minds. And I was able to talk to another friend of mine, Mickey Conway, who's the CEO of Metro Wastewater Recovery. And, we're I'm the stormwater, he's the wastewater. Okay. And we were talking about, is it as much generational as just diversity? Like, are we focused too much on the age thing versus they're just different ways people want to communicate? And there's just more ways to communicate today than there was 10 years ago. And, right. But I would say it's a really hot topic, and I haven't heard any great solutions around it besides the basic, be curious, right? Stay open-minded, keep a growth mindset, all those things that we know that you should be doing as a leader to manage it. I haven't heard anything that is like the silver bullet.
Winning lottery ticket.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Just, I guess, for the audience, we're talking about the generations of traditionalists, baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Y, Gen Z, that may be called different things to different groups, but basically 6 generations. And the one thing that I guess from my perspective I would say would stand true is what we talked about aspirational vision. I think all generations could appreciate an aspirational vision. I think all generations hopefully can respond to goal setting with guidance and objectives for those goals. I think maybe. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I would say that is kind of going back on what I just said. The one consistent thing is meaningful work.
There you go. Yeah.
And I feel like in public works, we nail that, right?
Right.
And it goes back to we're not communicating it very well. But if you are trying to bring a group together, it's gonna have to be on that why, that meaningful work that they want to come and do. And the reality is they won't come in if it doesn't meet that, right?
Yeah, especially it seems like the trend is for the newer generations. There's a lot of purpose elements in those decision-making jobs, and with the infrastructure industry probably presenting more job opportunities than there are people to fill those gaps. People have choices.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot more power in this younger generations that I think we, as Gen Xers, we went with a lot of ideals, but we caved pretty quickly to, kind of following suit. This group's not going to cave. And I do think as those of us that are in leadership positions for organizations, we do need to be looking at our structure, and we need to be paying attention to working in a different way, and be more focused on the result than how you get to it. And that's harder, right? So it puts more on us, but I think the reward is going to be there because this generation is creative and they're hardworking. We just have to, I think, accommodate that, figuring out what it is that brings out the best in them.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you were speaking about that, the term came to mind, just being outcome oriented, and you said that in so many words. I think the challenge is if the outcome is a successful project or initiative or whatever that has a compliant scope, schedule, and budget, those are outcomes that would normally be acceptable, I think, for most projects to rate them. But as you know, as many stakeholders as you deal with and the public's expectation, a great project, not communicated properly can turn into a bad project, right? Even if, it was done on time with the correct scope and, within the budget, but people didn't get engaged about it. And that, I guess I'm just talking about a little bit, could be a potential downside of just looking at outcome oriented, as I said that, because, well, did we achieve the outcome that the public expected, because they're paying generally. So.
Yeah, and challenging that thinking a little bit when I say outcomes too, right? I think the on time, on schedule, right, on budget are like givens, but really what you want is that, well, how do you want people to feel in the space? How do you want the public to buy into that space? And those are harder to measure, but it gives you a lot more grace with those other things. And trying to get our people to think about delivering their project in this more aspirational way, because those are the projects that really are, that provide that value from that community's perspective. They don't really care about the budget, right?
For sure.
And I'm not saying we should ignore budgets, right?
Yeah. They care about the tax or the fee, but not the,
and I think that will help people be like, well, I want to deliver this for, Joanne, who lives next door on this project, versus I want to make the budget work. And I think that's the stuff that will drive people then to come in and do the extra hours, because of that connection to the people and the meaning of the work, versus I'm just trying to save money. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think your district, your organization is a good example of providing alternate ways to not just deliver the project, but what the project is, right? You take more of an urbanized style and you make it more of a recreational, or I guess what I would call a natural or rural style. I mean, I interact with some of your staff, obviously, and they show these pictures all the time. I'm just thinking, man, that looks so great. But I don't then see all the discussions that probably happen to lead to that, like, well, it's going to cost this, but in long-term maintenance, it's that. More land, whatever it is. But I think you guys are one of the leaders in delivering projects in a way that's probably more integrated, right, with the environment.
Yep, that's definitely our goal.
Yeah, well, there you go. You're hitting your goals.
Yes.
Great leaders do. So kudos to you. And with that, we've gone big, we've gone wide, we've gone all over this country. Now we're going to pull it back a little bit. Looking back, what's one leadership lesson? I'm not going to hold you to one. From your impressive career that you would want the next generation, speaking of those generations or the generations ahead of you, to consider, and for those public sector leaders to understand?
Yeah.
Your lessons.
I think the number one lesson that I like to share is that leadership isn't about you. It's about serving others, and it's about helping them be at their best to make a positive impact. And I think so often we trip over ourselves because we've got an ego, or we've got, negative talk, or we have, what are people going to think about me, that prevent us from really thinking about how does the group perform. And once you can let go of, it's not about you, you find your juju, and you are so much more impactful and so much more respected. And I know that sounds simple, but I also know it's not easy, because we all come with baggage, right? But the more work we can do to let some of that stuff go, I feel like we will elevate our profession and truly be able to advance the quality of life for all by serving.
Yeah, servant leadership, certainly needed in the public sector. When you can't just spend more money to solve a problem, you got to be creative in serving the public. So that's great. Well, Laura, anything that we missed that you wanted to cover today? I mean, you did a great job, as I knew you would, covering all these, technical, objective, subjective questions. Anything we should have mentioned that we didn't?
I don't have anything. I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and recognizing serving the public is an honor and a responsibility. And I appreciate having media outlets like this, Shane, that help people think differently and think bigger so that we can continue to advance. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you for your time. I mean, this is part kind of workforce development, right? Sharing, these types of things. With that, and we appreciate Laura Kroeger for being on the show. This has been the episode of the Public Works Podcast. And thanks, Laura, again to you for sharing your insights on leadership resilience, vital role of leadership in protected communities with public infrastructure and with public agencies. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it with colleagues who care about future public infrastructure and services. I'm Shane Silsby. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.